Good evening, everybody. Our top stories tonight: the caravan of mostly Central American migrants determined to make their way to the U.S. border continues to grow tonight. The latest estimates put the number of migrants in that caravan between 7,000 and 14,000 people, although, as you can see in these pictures, sometimes it looks like many more than that. President Trump blaming radical Dems for encouraging that caravan and perhaps many more like it through their refusal to reform the U.S. immigration system, their creation of massive loopholes in our immigration laws. President Trump has declared he will send as many troops as necessary to secure our borders.
Something has to be done. You can't have this happen. Something has to be done. So in that way, I think maybe it's going to be a good thing. We're going to see. We're going to see. We're counting on our military. We'll have to call up our military if we need to. But we can't let this happen. We cannot allow our country to be violated like this.
And tonight we take up what the president can do to stop that caravan and secure our border in the face of this politically inspired onslaught. Among our guests tonight, Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio, Matt Gaetz of Florida. Also, the Trump administration taking steps to punish Saudi Arabia for the death of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. President Trump clearly skeptical about the Saudi government explanation of the murder of Washington Post columnist Khashoggi. We'll have the latest for you on the Trump administration's investigation of Khashoggi's murder, the cover-up, and its likely consequences. And a volatile day for the markets as the Dow Jones Industrial Average battled back from a nearly 550-point deficit to erase most of those losses by the end of trading. We'll have more on Wall Street. And our top story tonight: the caravan of mostly Central American immigrants is now in the Mexican city of Oaxaca tonight, where it has rested throughout the day. The caravan has traveled 45 miles into Mexico since Sunday, when it was located on the border bridge between Mexico and Guatemala. The caravan, however, remains more than 1,100 miles from McAllen, Texas. Now, that's a trek that would take 76 days at the pace that this caravan has made since leaving the border with Guatemala. If the caravan were to travel the 2,400 miles to the northwestern city of Tijuana, just below San Diego, they wouldn't arrive until late February, well after the November midterm elections, as you might note. And another issue the caravan might encounter is what Hurricane Willa may leave in its wake. The Category 3 storm is expected to make landfall tonight, 1,000 miles up the Mexican west coast from the caravan, but the devastation it might leave behind could pose an issue for the thousands in that caravan. Many of them are wearing flip-flops. They're already fighting blisters and the pain that comes from walking great distances. Dressed as they are, how could anyone be expected to travel that journey safely? The Wall Street Journal today reported the Honduran government is claiming that social activist and leftist politician Bartolo Fuentes and other leftists are behind the caravan. For the latest on how the White House is responding to this national emergency, we turn to Fox News Chief White House correspondent John Roberts.
Lou, good evening. The Brett Kavanaugh confirmation battle earlier this month really energized Republican voters and narrowed the margins in some races. Now President Trump is trying to bring home a House victory, or at the very least limit the losses, by leaning very heavily into this caravan as a threat to national security. In the Oval Office this afternoon, President Trump doubled down on his assertion that there are Middle Easterners, even possible terrorists, among the thousands of people in the caravan headed for the United States.
I have very good information.
President Trump has suggested that the Democrats are behind the caravan, but a former leftist politician in Honduras, Bartolo Fuentes, has claimed he was behind the exodus. Today, the vice president backed up Fuentes' claim and also pointed fingers at Venezuela.
President of Honduras, when this caravan was initiated, he told me that it had been organized by leftist groups in Honduras that were being financed in part by Venezuela.
At the pace it's moving, the caravan is more than 40 days away from the United States. But Americans are just 14 days away from going to the polls. President Trump has made the caravan and illegal immigration a centerpiece of his campaign rallies, like this huge event in Houston last night.
That is an assault on our country. That's an assault.
The Secretary of State today said the caravan's journey will be futile.
You will not be successful at getting into the United States illegally, no matter what. I repeat, the caravan will not cross our southern border illegally under any circumstances.
The president is placing blame for the caravan and illegal immigration in general at the foot of the Democratic Party. Democrats want no part of the immigration battle, hoping to change the subject in the next 2 weeks to issues they think they can win on, like health care. The Department of Homeland Security today released new numbers for the month of September on illegal immigration. In September alone, more than 41,000 people were apprehended illegally entering the country. The total number for the year, fiscal year 18, was almost 400,000. That's a 30% increase over the previous year. Lou?
John Roberts, thank you very much. Our first guest tonight to take up this threat to our sovereignty and the president's efforts to seal the southern border if necessary. Joining us tonight, Congressman Jim Jordan. He serves on both the Judiciary and Oversight Committees, also co-founder of the influential House Freedom Caucus. Thank you so much for being with us, Congressman.
You bet, Lou.
This is a remarkable statement by the president and the Secretary of State. They are saying straightforwardly, this does not happen in this administration. Your thoughts?
No, President Trump and Secretary Pompeo are exactly right. As a sovereign nation, one of the things that defines you is you have borders. And as a country, you're allowed to enforce your border security, your border laws. You need to be able to control who comes and who goes. That's just a basic element of being a nation state. So I agree with the president and Secretary Pompeo and everything they said, that they are not going to let this caravan in because, as the president indicates, Lou, we don't know who's all in this group of people. As you said, it could be as many as 14,000, 7,000. We don't know the number. We don't know who's all involved in this group. So, again, as a sovereign country, you have a right to control that, and we should not let them in until we know who, in fact, they are.
Don't you find it remarkable that in this day and age that we are actually debating whether or not we have a group of people, particularly on the left, suggesting we don't even have a sovereign right to determine who comes into this country? The president himself has been campaigning on a merit-based immigration system, and yet the Democrats refuse to follow. Some in your party as well refuse to follow the president's lead.
A couple of things. One, the Democrats are talking about actually abolishing ICE. They never want to secure the border. Their nominee for president just 2 years ago said she wanted a borderless hemisphere. So they don't get just the common sense that I think most Americans understand, that we have a right to control what goes on that border. This just underscores the simple fact, we need a border security wall, just like President Trump has talked about, just like he campaigned on, just like we campaigned on, and most importantly, just like the American people elected us to do. But that will not happen if the Democrats take control of Congress. We will never get the border secure and never get that border security wall.
It is to me stunning to think of some of the likely House chairs. Adam Schiff could become chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Yeah. Elijah Cummings take over oversight. Gerald Nadler would take up Judiciary. That would be a lot of fun for you, wouldn't it?
Well, it would be scary, I think, for the American people, because this whole FBI investigation that we've been looking into, the wrongdoings at the highest level of the Justice Department, that would stop, and they would spend all their time going after the president, the first family. If they take control, they are going to try to raise taxes. They are going to try to abolish ICE and never secure the border. They will continue to socialize medicine, and they will attempt to impeach the president. And they won't continue the investigations that we think are critical, like why the FBI took one party's Oppo research document, this dossier that was uncredible, not validated, everything else, dressed it all up, took it to a secret court to get a warrant to go spy on the other party's campaign. They will never try to get to the bottom of that issue, but they will do all these other things.
And tomorrow, as you well know, House Oversight and Judiciary Chairman and the ranking members of those two committees will be talking with Rod Rosenstein. Whose idea was it to to distill your majority into an even match? Whose idea was it to create this format and go along with it?
Yeah, right before I walked on, Lou, that has actually changed. That has been postponed. He is not coming. I think that is a good thing because I didn't agree with the format, frankly, the format that Rod Rosenstein wanted. So that has been postponed. Rod Rosenstein should not get any different deal than anyone else got. In fact, this is one of the things that drives Americans crazy. This idea that there's two standards now, one set of rules for us regular folk, but a different set if you're part of the politically connected class like Rod Rosenstein. So Jim Comey never got the deal Rod Rosenstein was trying to get. Andy McCabe didn't get that deal. He should come in just like everyone else, have to answer people's questions, and it should not be in a closed-door classified setting, because a closed-door classified setting means the American people will never know what his answers are. So I'm glad this is postponed. We need to get him in as soon as possible, but it needs to be in the right conditions where the American people can find out what he had to say.
Well, first, thank you for bringing us that news of that development. Secondly, whose idea was it to embarrass the Congress like this?
Well, I assume it's Rosenstein's. But remember, this is the guy, I mean, think about this. This is the guy who allegedly said he wanted to wear a wire to record the president, who allegedly talked about invoking the 25th Amendment, and he did that in front of subordinates, whether it was in a joking fashion or not, we'll find out at some point. But he did that in front of subordinates. He didn't do that in a classified setting, so why does he want a classified setting to answer questions about those very things? Only reason is because he doesn't want the American people to know what happened. This is the same guy who won't give us the Andy McCabe memos that we've subpoenaed, who won't give us the August 2nd scope memo that he wrote, which altered the scope of the Mueller investigation, who won't give us the Jim Baker 302s or the Bruce Orr 302s that we've requested. This is the same guy, so I don't think he should get to set the terms. I'm glad it's been postponed, but let's get him under the right conditions as soon as possible.
Congressman Jim Jordan, as always, good to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Up next, it appears anti-Trump CNN believes a caravan of illegal immigrants should be welcomed with open arms at the border. President Trump clearly defining what he thinks about that caravan, but what's the national left-wing media saying? Oh, we've got to know what they're saying. We take it up right after the break. Michael Goodwin joins us here. Stay with us. Just blocked a state law that would require proof of residency when registering to vote. Odd. How dare they? Judge Kenneth Brown suspended the implementation of the bill, writing in his decision that it threatens to disenfranchise an individual's right to vote. The ruling comes as reports that previously deported illegal immigrants are joining the caravan in hopes of entering the United States again, where the opportunity to vote in New Hampshire would certainly await them. The New Hampshire ruling, an invitation for fraud, and opens the door for illegal immigrants to register to vote. That apparently does not bother the folks in New Hampshire. Joining me now to take up the president's unprecedented support for Republican candidates, his tireless campaigns in these midterms, New York Post columnist, Fox Business contributor, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, Michael Goodwin. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Let's start with New Hampshire. I can't resist. A judge making that ruling, I would think that there might be a recall movement underway in just a matter of moments. Yeah. But it is New Hampshire.
Well, and you see this everywhere, that the most modest identification issues are always thrown out on the grounds that it'll hamper somebody somewhere. As though, I mean, there never seems to be any evidence of anybody losing the right to vote. It's just a theoretical argument that these judges always seem to assume the worst of.
Well, and what I love is that in many of the cases, as you say correctly, of course, the argument is very simple, straightforward, voter suppression. Meanwhile, there are 22 to 30 million illegal immigrants, according to the Yale-MIT study, in this country. That adds up to, what, 40, 50 congressional districts. I mean, that's a huge, if you will, suppression of citizens' right to vote.
Look, you can't fly in an airplane. You can't go into most Manhattan or large city office buildings without it. I mean, it just, you can't drive a car without it. I mean, all of these things, and yet when it comes to vote, which is so easily to manipulate, these judges always seem to have a very different idea, as though it is a right unlike any other.
It is a right that has been discovered by activist judges that simply don't care about citizenship. They don't care about preserving borders. They don't worry about preserving sovereignty.
Right.
We're looking at an amazing, to me, an amazing contest. Perhaps the most important, I think, unquestionably, the most important midterm election in my career. You could argue 2010, but this one is existential, I believe.
Yes. Well, look, when you've got the last 2 years history that we have coming into this midterm, the not just the trying to obstruct the president, but trying to bring down the president. The failure of Democrats to really participate and do their jobs in a fair way in Congress, and now for the caravan, the character assassination of Brett Kavanaugh. I think there's a lot at stake beyond the actual election itself. There's a whole question of American democracy at stake.
Right. And the president, as he often does, a master of concision. He said this campaign is about Kavanaugh, the caravan, and common sense. And I don't think one could argue with him on any one of the three.
Look, I think these rallies help just by the nature of them. But secondly, when he focuses like that on those issues and talks about them the way he talks about them, he really spotlights them. And those are issues that I think, in this, so far at least, clearly break in the Republicans' favor. And by him spotlighting them, he's really putting the pressure on the Democrats to come up with some answers.
Well, they've come up with answers, for crying out loud. I mean, they've got Bernie Sanders, they've got Elizabeth Warren, they've got Hillary Clinton, as you noted in your most recent column. That brings joy to the heart of, well, at least the Republican Party. You can't be serious.
I am. I think when you look at the Democratic presidential field, and we're talking Cory Booker, Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Andrew Cuomo, you look at that field and you say, that's a very weak field. And can you imagine any of them getting in the ring with President Trump for a debate? I think Hillary Clinton in that field would have a very good chance, and God knows she wants it more than anybody else.
Well, and Michael Bloomberg, of course.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
Tom Steyer and Eric Holder and
why not?
John Kerry.
Why not? All of them would make it an interesting contest, and the president just has to be praying.
Yes.
At this point, Michael, it's great to see you.
My pleasure.
Michael Goodwin. Well, if there's any doubt of the anti-Trump politics surrounding the migrant caravan making its way through Mexico right now, take a look at this photo. A pair of Honduran protesters outside the U.S. Embassy burning an American flag with a swastika painted on it, all in support of the caravan, a poster image for building the wall along our southern border, if we ever saw one, and we have seen endless images that do the same. Be sure to vote on our poll tonight. The question is, do you think the radical left is working with Central and South American socialists and leftists to organize and support the migrant caravan? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs, and follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. Up next, Kevin McCarthy's office vandalized in the latest episode of violence toward Republicans by radical leftist mobs. We take that up. The Washington Examiner's Byron York joins me right after these quick messages. We'll be right back. New York tonight say an explosive was found outside radical dim billionaire George Soros's home. They say it resembles a pipe bomb. They don't say it is a pipe bomb or that it is an explosive. It was found inside a package discovered in his mailbox. Meanwhile, in another effort to intimidate Republicans, police say two vandals shattered a window and stole electronic arts at a House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy's office in Bakersfield, California. They apparently threw a good-sized rock, a small boulder, you see it there, through the window. This is just the latest incident of violence against Republicans. Breitbart has compiled a list of at least 613 assaults against Trump supporters and members of the Republican Party. Joining us now to discuss the caravan crisis as well as the upcoming Rosenstein hearing on Capitol Hill tomorrow, Byron York, chief political correspondent for the Washington Examiner, Fox Business contributor. Byron, great to see you. Let's start with first the violence against Republicans by the left in this country. We've got a number of news organizations who want to paint this as some sort of duality in which it's a bipartisan issue. It is not. It is clearly not, and it is clearly the violence and the violent rhetoric of the left at issue.
The most serious being the shooting attack that nearly killed Representative Steve Scalise, could have killed others, specifically directed at Republican politicians, a high-powered rifle attack. This was really, really serious, and we can only hope that nothing worse than that happens.
Well, we don't have to hope. We can vote, and we can actually assure that none of them get into office. That's probably a reach too far. None of them. Some will likely to. We have to, after all, preserve a two-party system. Where do you see this election going? I think the president has put it straightforwardly correctly in terms of motivation here. It is Kavanaugh, caravan, without any question, in my judgment, and common sense. By the way, this is not the president's being modest. His judgment and his intellect that he's bringing to bear is not common at all.
You know, I was talking to some Republican strategists in recent weeks, and they were pretty encouraged by the after effects of the whole Brett Kavanaugh fight, not just in the Senate, but also in the House, too, basically really discrediting a lot of Republicans. But those consultants and strategists who are working to try to keep the House for Republicans did say, boy, we really could use one more thing. And everyone's wondering whether the caravan is that one more thing. It's just so obviously newsworthy. You have a mile-long caravan of people hoping to enter the United States illegally, and you have Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi telling their candidates essentially to ignore it because it's a distraction from the health care issue. And I think any voter with eyes can see that that's just not going to fly. So we've still got 2 weeks from today, and we don't know how this is going to play out.
Well, it seems to me that it's playing out remarkably well for the Republicans. This president has tough decisions ahead of him, certainly, but he also has two opportunities here. One is to actually form the partnership that we thought might have developed between Andres Manuel Obrador. That didn't happen. He led the president's people on. Peña Nieto, the president of Mexico, it looked like a partnership might be forming on the caravan. That didn't happen. Now, this is a country that has to defend its borders. This president saying he will send as many troops as necessary to that border. That caravan, he has declared, will not enter the United States.
Well, first of all, there are, limits on what troops can do in a situation like this. Also, it could be, first of all,
those limits, by the way, are not quite what people think, Byron. Just to go to the point, it's our understanding, and it's a clear one, that those troops can even move into Mexico at the president's orders at the border for the purpose of defending that border. This is, all the fancy legal minds that operate in Washington, frankly, need some support, because that's growing up as a quick mushroom of conventional thought that needs to be, I think, corrected.
Also, you could have an extraordinary situation. We've heard that this group is actually planning to take kind of the long route to the United States, the western route, to end up in Tijuana and possibly enter in California, which, California is a state that wants to think it's its own country. They want to have their own foreign policy. They want to have their own domestic policy.
This is not the right president for California to have to negotiate that with.
Well, I think this could set up an extraordinarily interesting situation if, in fact, this comes to pass, that these migrants are trying to enter the United States in California. The government of California does not want to do anything to stop them, and the President of the United States wants to enforce federal law. It could be a really interesting situation.
Well, it's a difficult and needlessly difficult situation for this president. He is the commander-in-chief, the president, and Jerry Brown, frankly, is not in his league. It is not a contest that he would want, I would think. He's been over time, no matter what you think of the left-wing Governor Moonbeam, he's made some pretty good political judgments. I don't think that would include taking on the President of the United States, particularly this one. Byron York, always good to talk with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lou.
The Supreme Court blocking a lower court ruling that Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross be deposed in lawsuits challenging the Trump administration's decision to add a question about citizenship to the 2020 census. Can you imagine this? The lawsuit brought by leftist immigrant organizations and 17 Democratic-leaning states, are just plain blue states, concerned, they say, that adding a citizenship question, get ready, would discourage immigrants filling out the census because of the Trump administration's tough stance on immigration. The Supreme Court says not even a reasonable effort at a good try, turning them down flat. Up next, the national left-wing media says President Trump is making too big a deal of that massive migrant caravan making its way toward our border.
This is a president who is having flashbacks to 2016 and the fear-mongering that worked for him. Immigration is what he uses to stoke this kind of fear.
This is fear and loathing on the campaign trail 2018.
He's making more and more outlandish, really unhinged claims. I understand fear-mongering. I get it.
That's going to help Trump drive out that base that gets really riled up by the fear-mongering and the racism.
And this is a base election, and it's a fear election.
And it is an orchestrated campaign by a subsidiary of Comcast. Their corporate orders are obviously fear and fear-mongering. And the little darlings you just watched, they're following their orders. We take that up after the break. I'll be talking with Congressman Matt Gaetz. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Wall Street today stocks lower, but not as low as they might have closed. The Dow down 126 points. It had been down as much as 550 points. The S&P down 15. The Nasdaq down 31. Volume on the big board heavy, trading 4.3 billion shares. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast on the Salem Radio Network. New reports today show previously deported illegal immigrants and criminals are among the migrant caravan headed toward our southern border. The caravan is in the southern Mexican province of Chiapas, some 1,100 miles from McAllen, Texas, but 2,400 miles from Tijuana, a northwestern city that they may want to, we are told, may want to travel to. And I may be spending more time with President Obama these days than I usually prefer to, but for perspective, it's important to see what this man has said over a decade ago on border security and illegal immigration.
We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked, and circumventing the line of people who are waiting patiently, diligently, and lawfully to become immigrants in this country.
The fundamental transformation turns out to have been in Barack Obama. Joining us now to talk about that caravan and the latest announcement that Rod Rosenstein's classified interview with the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees has been postponed. Congressman Matt Gaetz, member of the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman, great to have you with us. Here we go again. What's up with this postponement? Not coming this time from Rosenstein, but from the 4 elders of the Congress, the House, who were playing this game. What do you make of it?
Lou, we make being a member of Congress so much harder than it has to be. All we need to do is tell the truth, hold open hearings, and show the American people what's really happening. I am so frustrated that we are now weeks after Rod Rosenstein. We learned that Rod Rosenstein had made statements about wearing a wire on the president, and we have not had him in an open hearing under oath to answer questions. I'm hopeful the fact that we've ended this little, like, behind closed doors patty cake game between the committee chairman and Rod Rosenstein, the fact that we've dispensed with that means we'll have more transparency in this process and more openness. But you know what, Lou? Frankly, sometimes our own leadership and the other side, they want to keep Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows and Matt Gaetz out of the room because we're the ones that ask the tough questions, and they don't want us to participate because that'll provide the answers, and we want to see where the truth leads.
And along with Devin Nunes, you all have been spearheading the calls for the truth. Imagine that, from the Justice Department, from the FBI, by the way, also from the FISA courts, which appear to be complicit in the political corruption of the FBI and the Department of Justice. I want to turn very quickly to what you think will happen next. Are we going to ever see, well, let me put it another way. Are we going to see any results from the Rosenstein interview before the midterm elections, or have they successfully run out the clock on that as well?
My fear is that there is a bipartisan desire to make no waves before the election. The Democrats think they've got the wind at their back. The Republicans think we ought to be quiet about everything other than tax cuts. It doesn't matter which party wins or loses the election when it comes to our jobs as member of Congress to do our oversight. So whether Rosenstein is fired or not fired, whether Republicans win or lose, we should never have a government that is trying to unseat a duly elected president, and that's what I'm going to be fighting for.
And in that, the caravan seems timely. Whether it's 7,000, 14,000 people, we know it's making its way north. Everyone making it clear they're going to enter the United States. The president says that caravan will not. Your thoughts?
I'm proud of our president for protecting the border, but you made a point earlier in the show that is worth highlighting. This is not just a group of desperate migrants. We have people who are criminals, thugs, and Lou, I have received information from intelligence officials in Central America and even members of the intelligence community in the United States that you have some folks that have come from as far as Africa to join the caravan because they believe that is the way to gain illegal entry into the United States. Special interest aliens, jihadists, people from a different hemisphere using this weakness on our border to bring problems to the United States. That's why this is so serious. It's beyond a humanitarian crisis. It is a national security issue, and our president, who is tasked with protecting us, needs to make sure that this caravan is stopped, and I think he will.
Yeah, the idea that this is a humanitarian crisis fits into the left-wing narrative. But the reality is that this is an orchestrated effort. It is a political effort. That it's occurring 2 weeks before the election is no accident, nor is it an accident that we now understand a second caravan has been assembled in Honduras of about 1,000 people at this point and preparing to cross into Guatemala. It is, at what point do we simply just say, please take our country? It is open to the world. And what do we say to all the people who are in line, as President Obama, former President Obama said, who are in line, and he was much concerned some decade ago about being fair to them. No more, obviously.
Well, and Lou, let me make this point. This is not one caravan or two caravans. This is a new strategy to get people who are not supposed to be in the United States into our country. And so if we do not take strong, bold action, the caravan will never end. It will be ongoing, and our country will be borderless, and Americans will be left vulnerable. That's why this is so important. I don't think it's a coincidence that this is happening around election time, but we better show our strength.
And the president is doing, I think you would agree, just exactly that. Thanks so much. Congressman Matt Gaetz.
Thank you.
Up next, former President Barack Obama takes his sanctimony, his sizable ego, it's really an outsized, supersized ego, to the campaign trail. Doesn't attract many people, but he's still got his, well, very high regard for himself. We'll take that up and much more. We'll be right back after this. Sky News that body parts of Saudi activist and journalist Jamal Khashoggi were found in the garden of the Saudi Council's official residence. That report casting doubt on the Saudi claim that Khashoggi died accidentally in a fistfight. We've moved well beyond that narrative. The president weighing in just moments ago during a meeting with senior military leaders.
From day one, from the thought, whoever put it in their minds, that was not a good thought. The process was no good. The execution was no good. And the cover-up, if you want to call it that, was certainly no good.
The president awaiting further investigation from, of course, all of the intelligence agencies, the return of Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, and further discussions with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Well, out on the campaign trail, under the guise of campaigning for Democrats at a rally in Nevada, former President Barack Obama really apparently just wanted to talk about himself.
You guys go ahead and take a seat. I got a lot to say. I'm not alone in saying I enjoy coming to Las Vegas. This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot. I believe in facts. I don't believe in just making stuff up. Actually, Obama's doing pretty good. I can't make this any simpler. Now, let me say something. As the person who actually passed the law, hundreds of thousands of people are really benefiting from Obamacare. They just don't call it Obamacare, which is fine. I didn't make up the name. I can't tell you how encouraged I've been. I'm hoping that you make the right call here.
You got to be kidding. Obama referred to himself 92 times in his 38-minute speech. And by the way, that doesn't include the stammers. Or if you break it down, that's an average of once every 24.7 seconds, he was talking about, well, his glorious self. Joining us tonight, Lawrence Jones, the editor-in-chief of Campus Reform. Also with us, Gina Loudon, political analyst, member of the President's Media Advisory Board, the author of Mad Politics. Great to have you with us. We recommend Gina's book to you highly, and it's great to see you both. Let me start, Gina, with how you doing, Lawrence? Let's start with those Obama references. I don't want to visit his mind, but I, for the life of me, cannot figure out why a man would talk more about himself in the first person. I mean, that's just crazy what he was doing.
Well, Lou, there's a legacy to hang your hat on. You can talk more about yourself than any former president ever in the history of presidents. I mean, he needed something, Lou. This president, President Trump, has set about, not intentionally, but just organically dismantling everything that Obama did, because what Obama did wasn't the kind of thing that was long-lasting and supported by the American people and the base out there. And President Trump, on the other hand, has gone through and systematically made things the way that he promised they would be when he made his promises during his election and intended to keep them. Promises made, promises kept, and he's just promised, Lawrence, that he is not going to permit. Sky News that body parts of Saudi activist and journalist Jamal Khashoggi were found in the garden of the Saudi Council's official residence. That report casting doubt on the Saudi claim that Khashoggi died accidentally in a fistfight. We've moved well beyond that narrative. The president weighing in just moments ago during a meeting with senior military leaders.
From day one, from the thought, whoever put it in their minds, that was not a good thought. The process was no good. The execution was no good. And the cover-up, if you want to call it that, was certainly no good.
The president awaiting further investigation from, of course, all of the intelligence agencies, the return of Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, and further discussions with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Well, out on the campaign trail, under the guise of campaigning for Democrats at a rally in Nevada, former President Barack Obama really apparently just wanted to talk about himself.
You guys go ahead and take a seat. I got a lot to say. I'm not alone in saying I enjoy coming to Las Vegas. This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot. I believe in facts. I don't believe in just making stuff up. Actually, Obama's doing pretty good. I can't make this any simpler. Now, let me say something. As the person who actually passed the law, hundreds of thousands of people are really benefiting from Obamacare. They just don't call it Obamacare, which is fine. I didn't make up the name. I can't tell you how encouraged I've been. I'm hoping that you make the right call here.
You got to be kidding. Obama referred to himself 92 times in his 38-minute speech. And by the way, that doesn't include the stammers. Or if you break it down, that's an average of once every 24.7 seconds, he was talking about, well, his glorious self. Joining us tonight, Lawrence Jones, the editor-in-chief of Campus Reform. Also with us, Gina Loudon, political analyst, member of the President's Media Advisory Board, the author of Mad Politics. Great to have you with us. We recommend Gina's book to you highly, and it's great to see you both. Let me start, Gina, with how you doing, Lawrence? Let's start with those Obama references. I don't want to visit his mind, but I, for the life of me, cannot figure out why a man would talk more about himself in the first person. I mean, that's just crazy what he was doing.
Well, Lou, there's a legacy to hang your hat on. You can talk more about yourself than any former president ever in the history of presidents. I mean, he needed something, Lou. This president, President Trump, has set about, not intentionally, but just organically dismantling everything that Obama did, because what Obama did wasn't the kind of thing that was long-lasting and supported by the American people and the base out there. And President Trump, on the other hand, has gone through and systematically made things the way that he promised they would be when he made his promises during his election and intended to keep them.
Promises made, promises kept, and he's just promised, Lawrence, that he is not going to permit